Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to the Winning at Being You podcast. I'm your host, Coach Mills Rogers. This is a space where we have real conversations with people who are using their voice, their experiences, and their purpose to create impact, not just for themselves, but for others. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Robert Cooper Jr. We're going to talk about leadership, transformation, and what it actually looks like to win at being who you are without pretending or performing. If you're watching live, feel free to drop where you're watching from in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into it. Today's guest is Robert Cooper Jr., a trauma-informed leadership expert, author, and the founder and CEO of Young Men Becoming Men Incorporated, a nonprofit dedicated to transforming the lives of young men in grades 6 through 12. Robert's work is deeply personal. Growing up in the Norris Street projects of North Philadelphia, he found direction through sports and through a coach who believed in him before he fully believed in himself. That experience helped shape the mission he now lives out every day. Through his signature GOAT leadership experience, which stands for greatness over adversity and trauma, Robert helps young men develop identity, resilience, emotional intelligence, and the confidence to see their own greatness before the world tries to define them otherwise. He is also the author of The Authentic Man, Embracing Your Journey, and a certified trauma-informed leadership practitioner through Indiana University School of Public Health. I'm excited for this conversation because Robert's work sits right at the intersection of purpose, healing, leadership, and helping young people become who they were created to be. Robert Cooper Jr., welcome to the Winning at Being You podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
So, Robert, for those people who are just meeting you, how would you describe the work you feel called to do?
I describe it as a mission and purpose. When we experience trauma, we don't understand what is going to play out for our lives later. And through that, it helped me discover my mission because I dealt with the abandonment of not having my father. I dealt with a mom that was very verbally abusive. And then that made me look at myself to where it's like, okay, if they don't love me, how can I love myself? And when the people that we love hurt us, it dampers us. It hurt us bad, and we turn to things and turn to people. But I didn't want to turn to no one because I figured out life was two choices in life. Do I take the bad road and follow the steps that's already been created for me, or start on my own path and stay within myself and become who I've created to become?
Mm. I appreciate you sharing that, your vulnerability with sharing how, you had those issues with your parents. And so what was that like as a child growing up where you felt like maybe you didn't have that support that you needed, and how that has basically led you to your purpose?
What it's like to be in an abandoned building? It's nothing, right? So that's how I felt.
Exactly.
Like I had nothing. Like it was just a foundation of family, but I didn't have a family.
Mm,
And when we don't have a family, we have a family. As young men, we tend to search and do things just to be accepted. And the way I wanted to be accepted was I was the class clown, so I made people laugh, and that was because I got the attention that I desired. But I still was failing not just within, but outwardly in school as well. And I didn't want
mm.
to see other young men experience what I experienced. So as adults and as men, you said thank you for being vulnerable. That's one thing about me. I love to be vulnerable because if I'm not vulnerable enough, how can I be able to reach the next generation?
Mm. Words of wisdom right there. And so you grew up in the North Street projects of North Philly, and you shared that sports and a coach who believed in you helped redirect your path. Can you describe that?
Yes, Coach Frazier, I thank God for him because if it wasn't for him coming to my life, this helped me start the foundation of my program because it was more than just basketball to me. It was about life as well. And he imparted wisdom in us and told us what it's like to be a man. Just because you have, man genitals, that doesn't make you a man. That doesn't define you. And that stuck out with me a lot because I'm like, okay, well, it's more to just in a body part that defines me as being a man. He taught us about character. He taught us about mindset. He made the practices hard that also challenged us and helped us grow as well. But it's what you when you get into something, some people get into the sport just to be a part, and some people get into it to gain something. And as young men, we're open, and then we have those coaches that actually that's digging deep and investing in us and giving us that time. It's a breath of fresh air.
Now, I know growing up in North Philly, there's probably a lot of temptation all around. You probably had a whole bunch of people that was probably trying to lead you astray, wanting to use you for whatever reason. And so, how did having somebody like the coach you mentioned, how did that keep you on the right track? How did you not fall to that temptation that you saw out there in the streets?
The coach was great, but at the end of the day, it's my decision, and I had to look within myself to say, do I want to be a statistic and be like the examples that I had within my family and within my neighborhood, or do I want to do something different? And I always desired to be different, and I never was the type person that followed the crowd. And in my neighborhood, you only had two choices: you either sell drugs, uh, be caught in the game, or you take a different path and deal with what comes with that, and that's being teased. And that helps because when you're younger, it forces you to embrace something, your difference. When you're not able to embrace your difference, you just follow the crowd. And I was okay with who I was, with being a punk. I was okay with being soft. I was okay with whatever name they have for me because at the end of the day, it's my life. And if I make the decision, the wrong decision, guess what? I'll be a dead punk. I'll be a locked up punk because I felt as though just because what you were saying, I wasn't able to embrace who I am, so I followed.
Mm. Man, I hope that there's some young people listening to this because I know here in my neck of the woods, I'm here in Austin, Texas. There's been a number of issues recently with young men doing things that they shouldn't be doing, going to a restaurant and, getting violent when people are just supposed to be having fun. Back in my hometown, somebody in my hometown is Ville Platte, Louisiana. A young man caught basically a stray bullet on his way to football practice. And,
Mm.
the unfortunate thing is many of our young men, men of color, black men, young black men that are now going to, spend the rest of their lives more than likely in jail because of a split second decision. And so, yeah, it just kind of goes with what you were saying.
Right. But when the last time that young man was told someone loved him? When was the last time
Mm,
that young man actually had someone to like literally invest in him? Their cry for help is different, but since we see the behavior, we dismiss them because of their behavior. But it's deeper and a rooted issue within the behavior. They've been neglected. They dealt with abandonment. They want to fit in. They're angry because they don't know how to effectively communicate. They don't know how to express their emotions.
mm. Good stuff right there. Very, very true. And so, yeah, they express it in a certain kind of way. And, I had a guest on here maybe about 2 weeks ago where he said that he almost shot somebody. And he talked about the mentality he had at the time and that, that was basically a mask.
Right.
And it's something that even in the mental health group that I attend down here in Austin, they talk about that mask.
Hmm.
And oftentimes we have a mask to protect us from
Right.
certain things. And so the guest I had a few weeks ago, he said it had to do with some abuse that he
Hmm.
had experienced as a child.
Hmm.
And so, yes, so many of our young men, they're wearing that mask as a form to protect themselves and to uh, give off a certain impression,
Right.
unfortunately.
But sometimes as young men, we're given a mask. Think about it. From the
Mm,
time we fall down, we're told to what? We better not cry.
right.
So how do we formulate our emotions? So our mindset is In order for us to appear tough, we have to cover our emotions.
Mm, yes, indeed. Good stuff right here. And so, with all of that, at what point did you begin to realize, all right, that coach and some of those other people that helped save me, that's something that I now need to do and give back to other young men? When did the light come on for that?
When I struggled with unforgiveness and got sick with Crohn's disease, how can I want to be able to move forward? It's like drinking poison and think I'm going to continue to live. It's like putting weights on my back. I think I'm going to be able to push up at some point. I had to understand that in order for me to be able to heal and move forward, I have to forgive and stop keeping score of everything someone done to me. So that helped me understand that in order for me to transition over from being broken, I had to have a healed mindset. I had to be able to forgive others. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive the way I see myself. I had to forgive myself for the way I carried myself and allow people to control the negative mindset because I was mad at them and angry at them. And most young men just seeing a reflection. Doing this, I've helped a lot of young men that I experienced some similar stuff, and that actually helps the light to come off. It's like, okay, this is why I experienced this. This is why I dealt with not having my dad, even though I desired to have my dad. Or this is why my mom was verbally abusive, and I didn't understand at the time because I encountered some other young men that was verbally abused that did not receive enough love or didn't feel like they wanted to be lived anymore.
Mm. You talked about healing, and that's a word that's just thrown around a lot. You know, if you look at TikTok or whatever, people are always talking about healing. What did healing look like for you?
Healing, like for me, is not you won't be the new you because we still carry traumatic experiences that we are triggered by. But healing is overcoming the process of unforgiveness and brokenness every day. So healing looks like to me a different mindset, having a different heart and compassion for people because my heart was hardened towards people. So I was not a compassionate person at all. Healing to me is being able to stop and just say hi or see how a young man's doing, or being able to just do how I can be able to serve my community.
Do you think we ever get fully healed?
In that one aspect, we can, but then another aspect, I say no. I say we can because it's about the process of letting go the old you in order to transform to the healed version. But then I say we can't because sometimes the healed version is not the version that we expected, and we don't want to deal with that version of us.
Oh, wow. That's interesting right there. So, yeah, elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay, so the version that you see of you now is okay because we're comfortable with who we are. Sometimes we can accept that we're bitter, that mindset of this is who I am and this is who you're going to accept. That's the unhealed version of you. But the healed version of you is coming out of that comfort zone. And it's hard for us to come out of that comfort zone because it's a crutch. For when we do mess up or make that mistake, we can easily lean back on it.
Mm, makes sense. Makes sense, man. Appreciate you going deeper with that. That's something different that I hadn't really heard that before. So very insightful. And so your mission is to help young men see their greatness before the world tells them otherwise. What are
Yes.
some of the things that the world starts telling boys, especially boys carrying a lot of challenges at home, trauma, things of that nature, that makes them lose sight of who they are?
That's what the GOAT stands for. It's greatness over adversity and trauma. And the first thing that we are born with a measure of is greatness. But what we offer is the adversity of life, the adversity of our communities, the adversity of what we can do besides being great. We don't often get to see our greatness because the environment we go to. If our mindset is conditioned to our environment, our mindset will stay conditioned to the environment. So how can we create greatness if I'm in the projects and all I see is shooting? All I see is people selling drugs. So where's my greatness at when the environment is not showing me that I'm great? So we have to be able to help young men understand that it's not just it's more greater than what they see within their environment. And that's helping them invest in themselves first. You know, helping them understand that what do they like? what they're passionate about. What are some things that excite them? That's the question that we don't ask them.
Mm. I used to be a teacher, and I worked at inner city schools with high poverty rates and everything. And I'd hear the kids. I mostly majority of the time I work with middle school students, but I did work with high school students. And along the lines of what you're saying, they often said, "Well, yeah, everybody does such and such in my neighborhood. Everybody is selling drugs or they're smoking weed. Everybody I know does that." And they would even go as far as to say, well, every black man I know does that. And I'm like, well, I'm a black man, and I don't
Right,
do that.
right,
And Mr. So and so right there is a black man,
yes,
and so that's two black men right there.
right.
And so with that, I know that you're encountering kids that have that mentality, like that's all they only know what they know.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
so how do you, I guess, of course you can take them out of that from time to
Hmm.
time, but what are some other things that you can do to help expose their minds to the fact that, hey, there's more to life than what's happening in this neighborhood?
My favorite is the old simple vision board. Get them a magazine and a clear board and understand their vision for life, not the vision that we want them to have. And a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
that happens because our vision for them overclouds what they actually want, and they never get the chance to live out their vision because they're living out someone else's vision. So I just let them put literally a vision board together and just help them start building towards that. Okay, well, your mindset has to change when you start working. You have to be able to present yourself in a different manner. Have good characteristic skills, have good communication skills, good work ethic. So you just coach them from what they see for themselves and helping them start moving towards where they want to go towards their goals.
Mm-hmm. And so when you think back on your own journey, and also this is going to apply to the kids that you're talking about, that you're working with, or I should say the young men that you're working with, you obviously had to unlearn something in order to become the man and leader that you are. What was
Yes, sir.
that you had to unlearn?
I had to unlearn that even though what I experienced, it does not define me because for so long I carried okay, well, this is who I am since I experienced being verbally abused, since I experienced not having my father, since I experienced Crohn's disease. I thought, okay, these moments of my life define who I am. And it took me a while to overcome that. Mindset is key because the war that we fight is the battle within. In order to be able to overcome, you have to win the war within first.
Mm. And you shared that you have Crohn's disease, and I know there's a lot of people out there that might not be too familiar with it, but it can be a very challenging disease to deal with.
Yes,
And so,
yes,
how have you dealt with that? Because I know there might be some, man, why me? Why
yes.
do I have to suffer with this?
I took aloe vera juice for 6 months, and that helped heal my Crohn's disease. So that's how I was able to get over it, overcome it through my faith in Jesus Christ. That helped out a lot as well.
Mm,
But to overcome, you have to, like I mentioned earlier, you give up some things. You got to give up the brokenness. You got to give up that bitter mindset, that broken heart. Because and Crohn's disease is an inflammatory bowel disease. So you experience flare-ups when you get angry or when you get anxious or you get nervous or you get mad. Your body internally flares up, and then that's what your intestinals.
mhm. Yeah, and like I said, I've known a few people with it, and yeah, the flare ups can be pretty intense. And
Yes, sir.
so I know, like I said, sometimes people are just like, golly, why I
Yeah,
got to experience that. And I
right.
know a man like yourself, coming from a challenging background, and then you
Hmm.
maybe hit with this is kind of like,
Yes.
oh, I can't catch a break,
At
you
all.
know?
And at one point, I just wanted to give up. I just wanted to die because it's like, okay, I'm dealing with family. Now I got to deal with an inflammatory disease. And I went from, in a matter of a year and a half, from 300 pounds to 97 pounds.
Oh, man.
So I
Oof.
was really frail and small. But the whole time, you got to want to get, you want to, I have to want to be able to give up to unforgive. And I didn't want to give up unforgiveness. So it's like we're still carrying the sicknesses and we're still carrying our same ways and old mentality. So in order to something to change, I have to be able to change my mindset, and I have to forgive.
Mhm.
And it was hard to
Again,
forgive.
yeah. Again, I just appreciate you being so open, and I know that's part of your platform. But oftentimes it's much more difficult to do it. So again, I appreciate the fact that you are just being so open about some of the things that you've experienced.
I appreciate you. But how can
Mhm.
I help others heal and overcome if I'm not going to be able to give?
Exactly. People appreciate that, because the worst thing, and I've said it when I get a chance to speak in front of audiences, is that, hey, you want that person that's up there trying to help you out, you want to know that they had some skin in the game, that
Yes,
they've
sir. Yes,
done
sir.
this, they've experienced certain things. And so that helps them or helps me be more relatable to them and
Right.
more credible to them. And so again, what you're sharing with us today is like, wow, I can just see it right now that, these young men that you're working with, man, when they hearing that, you're pretty much saying like, man, there's no excuse,
Yes, at all.
because yeah, I've dealt with this stuff.
Yes,
I've
yes.
dealt with it head up, hands on. So
Hmm.
yeah. So you created the GOAT leadership experience,
Yes.
greatness over adversity and trauma. What does trauma informed leadership look like with these kids, with these young men that you're working with?
Young men that are mentally suppressed, emotionally emotionally suppressed, don't know how to process their trauma, but have greatness in them and leadership. But no one is actually invested in the greatness that's going to develop the leadership to help them become great men.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. And so with trauma informed, a lot of people hear stuff like that and they feel like it means lowering the expectations. They
Mm.
feel like it
Yes.
means anything goes, it's carte blanche, we feel sorry for you. And it's something that I saw sometimes in the school system, because what I often saw was sometimes you get those teachers that were just, man, they just want to just drop the hammer
Right.
on kids all the time. They wanted their pound of flesh for every little
Right.
thing. But then you get some teachers that's like, oh, well, Johnny, you showed up at school today. Let's throw a party for you.
Right.
And so obviously we need a middle ground. And so we want to make sure that we're not lowering expectations. And so would you say that your program, what does your program do to not lower expectations or excuse behaviors that maybe don't serve the kids well, serve the young men well?
Meet them where they're at. That's the key. Meeting them where they're at. They already feel low. They already feel like they may not have no value. And it's helping them understand that even though you may be here, in spite of what you're going through, there's so much more that you can give and so much more that you can offer. But first, you have to work on you. First, you have to stop doing the things that you're doing. And what are some ways that you can gain the help that you need to become successful, not just in life, but at school, at work, at home?
So, how do you explain the difference between, let's say, understanding where they're coming from, understanding their home environment, understanding their story, while still holding them accountable?
Understanding their generational gap. That's the key. Is understanding that our generation, your generation are different, but you still have to respect your mom. You still have to respect yourself. How do you carry yourself? Helping them understand who they are is the start to helping them gain the skills that we want them to have. Many young men fall by the wayside because, just like you mentioned about the teacher earlier, may slam their hand on the desk because they give up on them so fast. Because, okay, I didn't experience this growing up, so I can't relate. I don't understand what you're dealing with. All I see is how you behave and what I'm frustrated with.
And so you mentioned the generational gap. Like, what are some things that you see that maybe contribute to that generational gap? I guess that friction between maybe those in that are teaching them or working with them, why they can't maybe connect.
The generational gap is the communication factor. Since you mentioned school, the parent and the teacher have a common goal, and that's the student's success. But they don't be on the same page with the common goal because the parent may feel protective of the student, and the teacher is expressing another side of the student. So how can we be able to bridge that gap? And that's coming together to sit down to gain understanding and not be so defensive.
Mhm. So, in your work with your organization, what do you see the young guys needing the most right now? Identity, emotional regulation, regulating their emotions, a sense of belonging, discipline, or is it something else?
Identity, because some young men never experienced having a father. Some young men went through the adoption process. They don't really know who their family is. So a lot of young men that see they struggle with their identity, and this is what shaped them to hang out with the other young men that's hanging on the corner or doing things to fit in because they don't know who they are just yet.
And so, what do you think they find appealing about hanging out with the guys on the corner or joining the gang or whatever else? What does that give them?
The sense of belonging. When you feel like you belong, you feel protected, you feel welcome. But what they don't understand, that's a false sense because once they go out and commit that crime, their family is going to suffer while their friends are still moving forward. Or if they killed, their friends are still going to be doing the same thing. So you have to be able to love yourself. Self acceptance is the first thing. When you love yourself first, that's the belonging that they need. But they don't understand how the definition of love because they never may have the opportunity to be loved in a way where it wasn't without condition.
Mm. Now, a lot of our young men are taught to be tough, have that performative toughness at least, long before they're taught to be able to say, I'm hurt, that bothers me. How does that show up in the young men that you serve?
Most young men they get quiet because they don't know how to express the vulnerability of saying that I've hurt. Let's face it, when we say that we hurt as men, what we told, all right, you be all right, you know, pretty much put a band-aid on and get up and keep going. We don't have the opportunity for somebody to actually sit down and we could say, okay, I hurt in this area because I don't have what it takes without being judged. And when we do express ourselves and we be judged, as men and young men, we shut down once we feel as though we can't be vulnerable with anyone.
Hmm. So does your organization provides basically a safe space
Yes, sir.
for young men, right?
You're right.
Hmm. And so describe that process when somebody, I guess, share more about your organization. Yeah, tell us more about how your organization serves these young men.
Young men becoming men serves young men that are dealing with the transition of, you know, puberty. Their bodies change and their mindsets change, and they don't know how to embrace that. And then they just don't have the opportunity for somebody just better hug them, tell them they love them. I tell the young men I love them all the time, but most of them laugh and don't say it back or they're uncomfortable. But they have to know that someone loves them, and not just through a verbal action, but actually showing up for them. And what showing up for them is different for each young man. We can't show up for one young man and show up for the next young man the same way. So young men become men as developing leaders, helping to change their mindset so they can be effective in their communities. Once we get able to help them change their mindset, we got to help them make better decisions.
So what does that look like for your organization? Are you all mentoring these young guys one on one, or is it like some sort of group that you all have weekly or bi-weekly? How does that work?
Well, right now I go into the schools and I facilitate the program for 3 weeks, 3 days per week. And it's going and doing different cohorts. with different young men from sixth grade to eighth grade, and it's a very refreshing, very rewarding because young men, when you get back to see and just let them be able to talk, it's a lot that we can understand from them, but in the same breath, it's a lot that they need to be poured into
Mm. So, what does that typically look like when you first step on a campus or you start a cohort and you're like, hey, I'm here to work with you? What type of response do you typically get from these young men?
I get a lot of the blank stares, but I let them know that I'm not here to judge you. This is a free space, and then I just share who I am, and that's what I do to be able to connect. Because, like we mentioned earlier, if we can't be relative, then they're not going to be receptive. So I explain who I am, tell them one thing about me that they don't know, and then I have my ball and I pass it around, have each young man stand up, introduce themselves, tell us one thing that we don't know about them, and that's my icebreaker that I have.
Awesome. Um, I just did a program at a high school mentorship type program. And I know when I told people that I was doing it, they were kind of like, oh man, those kids are so bad nowadays. How did it go? And I'm like, man, it went great.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
said no problems at all, no disrespect or anything. And so I'm wondering, has my experience been similar to what you experienced?
Yes, I don't experience the disrespect. There's young men, they open. They want that. In the beginning, they may not be receptive, but by the third day, they're pretty much open because it's language and verbiage that they can relate to, and they see that you're not putting them down. You're trying to help them be able to build to become successful leaders.
Yeah, I know when I worked with the guys, a couple of the first session or two, I'm like, man, I'm super excited to be here, man. I'm pumped
Right,
up about this.
right,
And yeah, it's kind of like who would have a problem with that? Like what
right,
kid is going to have a problem with that? Because kind of like what you mentioned earlier, a lot of them are coming from places where maybe people aren't thrilled to see them.
right,
Maybe at home there's a lot of drama and parents or maybe, they're just not too happy about them
right,
right now. And so
right.
when you have somebody that's coming in, especially somebody that's not a teacher that's looking for grades or whatever from them,
Yes.
that's happy to see them, man, I think it speaks life into them.
Yes.
And so yeah, I never encountered any disrespect at all, man. It was
Hmm.
all good, man. It was
Right.
all love.
Right. Because the investment, and that's what they need, and they know they want that, but they may not show it right off hand. But as long
Hmm.
as you're there and they see that you're there, like you said, it's all love.
Hmm. So what are some practical ways that we as adults, whether we're coaches, whether we're educators, whether we're dads, mentors, etc., can help young men build emotional intelligence without it feeling like we're just trying to shove it down their throats.
But we have to embrace our own emotions first,
Mhm.
because as men, we so like you mentioned earlier, we put up a facade, we put a mask on. So how can we express to them to want them to overcome and we beat them over the head? Well, you should do it this way and you should do it that way. But you're not the first partaker. You're not the example that you are encouraging them to be.
Mm. And so you work with a lot of young men in grades 6 through 12. Right now, you say you're working with 6 through 8. What shifts have you seen when a young man begins to believe, maybe for the first time, that his story, his current situation, does not determine his future?
When he actually has a testimonial of what he has gained from the day. I will give you an example. A young man that I did the program with, he had problems being accountable, and he did not take accountability in his actions. And he had the extra opportunity to go to school the next day, and he said he wanted to just try it just to see how it would work out. And he took the actions of being accountable, not just doing his work, but taking responsibility for how he treated his classmates and was disrespectful to his teacher.
Awesome. And so what did he come back with?
He came back with that he has work to do, and that in order for him to be able to move forward in life, he has to be able to change his mindset and not follow the crowd.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I like that. I like that a lot. And so let's talk about that authenticity, because authenticity sometimes is, people really simplify it just into just being real,
Hmm.
when a lot of times it's deeper work. It's about being honest and being responsible and being aligned. And so why do you think, some of us confuse authenticity with just simply being real as opposed to what I just mentioned?
Because what is real to you? Is it real what you experience? Is it real because you have a hard heart not to be vulnerable, or is it real to being accountable? If I can speak for myself, I wasn't doing the accountability part at the beginning. I thought being real was because I was angry. Or, okay, well, this is how it is, and I'm putting a facade up. But the whole time, I'm not being real about how I feel about my emotions. I did not express my emotions, and that's being real. Just being accountable, being able to be vulnerable, peel the layers back. And in the beginning, I did not peel the layers back because the examples that I had around me, if I cried, I was soft. If I cried, I was a punk. I was called all the harsh words. So what technically is being real? And then when you find out what is real and then what was the facade of being real, is night and day. Now I'm just embracing. Okay, well, I have character flaws that I have to work on. I'm not forthcoming. I can be deceiving. I I'm not a person that where I feel as though I could be a better friend. Being real is checking yourself, and I had to check myself. If I wanted certain things, okay, well, my old ways is not gonna get me into the new way I want to go into. In my old ways, I was very angry. I was dismissive. I didn't want to be around a lot of people. I know this was never something I ever desired to do or dreamed about doing. I actually wanted to be a basketball coach. So being real was my dad one day before he got sick and passed away. He told me this is something that you should do to be able to help other young men. Share your experiences that what we went through, what we not being there, us coming to a point of where we was about to fight. And I didn't want to do it. But I thank him now, even though he's not here. I'm grateful for him encouraging me to do this because what I experienced, I would never had the opportunity to be able to help. I would have just been going on through life, bottled up, still angry, still bitter, still walking around like they owe me everything. But I had to be able to understand that what I experienced is it's the greater good. It really is. And at that moment, I know I didn't feel like it. And at that moment, you may not feel like it. And you may not see that. But is through this, there's a greater outcome. But you have to work through you. And that's what took a while for me.
Getting close to the end. And so I got maybe two more questions I want to ask you. What would you say to that young man who has been through a lot? That young man that feels counted out and does not understand that there is something great in him.
I asked him how many times you've been counted out, how many times you have gotten back up. When you get back up, there is a shift that can happen. But as long as you carry the time that you don't feel like you're worthy, you're not going to be able to see who you really are. So the greatness is there, but the mindset and the shift of loving yourself is the key to you moving forward.
Hmm. And so, my last question, Robert Cooper Jr., what does winning at being you, since it's the Winning at Being You podcast, what does it mean to you?
It means so much more than just winning. It's a lifestyle, a purpose, a calling. It means that I have a voice to be able to help someone else be able to overcome. That's winning to me because I was a person that didn't care about others.
Hmm. Outstanding, man. Just some great wisdom and insight. And I learned a lot just sitting here listening to your story and listening to your approach and everything. And so, if somebody is listening and they're like, man, that dude, I like what he had to say. And, um, man, I would like to maybe learn more about what he has to offer. How can they get in touch with you? How can they maybe utilize your services or products?
My email is Robert at robertcooperjr.com. My IG is Robert Cooper Speaks. I'm on Facebook as Robert Thomas Cooper Jr. You can reach out to me, and I'm here to help serve and help become divine leaders that are great and help young men to understand that, despite their circumstances, it's not who they are, and they can definitely achieve much more.
There you have it, folks. Robert Cooper Jr., trauma expert, CEO, blessed us today with some incredible insight and wisdom into young men. If you are a young man or an old man like us,
Yes,
this
sir.
is all stuff that we can use because we're none of us are finished products. And so again, I just appreciate you, Robert, for coming on my podcast.
I
Thank you so
appreciate you.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Keep winning at being you. Change happens one person at a time, 1 second at a time. Let's go.